I couldn't be happier. Before Andy actually turned up, I believe the Magnificent Seven consisted of one swimmer of color, a representative from each extreme of the educational spectrum, a muscle man, a giant, a chameleon, and a psychopath. When in fact, we have one swimmer of color, a representative from each extreme of the educational spectrum, a muscle man, a giant, a chameleon, and a one-legged psychopath. When I envision us walking seven abreast through the halls of Cutter High, decked out in the sacred blue and gold, my heart swells. And that's an excerpt from April's teen book pick, which is Whale Talk by Crutcher. And I'm Diana Layton from the Turner Memorial Library in Presque Isle, Maine. And I selected Whale Talk because I actually took it on as a challenge, despite the fact that Chris Crutcher's books attract a lot of praise as well as controversy. I was a little concerned that his writings wouldn't appeal to me, or maybe I wouldn't find them very interesting, which isn't the best thing for a librarian to say, but I figure I'd be honest. But I'm very glad that I took on Whale Talk. And the reason why Chris Crutcher's books take on so much controversy, they're frequently challenged. They've even been banned in some communities in recent years. They basically present a very realistic portrayal of not only teen life, but really life in general. And his use of language is such that if there's an appropriate time to maybe use what some might see as being more explicit language, he'll use it if it makes the character seem more realistic. When in fact his books probably aren't that much more explicit than a lot of other young adult books out there, but for whatever reason, his seem to attract a little bit more attention, positive and negatively. The positive attention, though, is because these books are also extremely well written, and this is certainly the case with Whale Talk, which follows the main character, T.J. Jones, who is a African American, Japanese American, as he puts it, Northern European American mixed race student living in a predominantly white community in Washington State. His story is that his mom was a very severe drug user and would neglect him and eventually abandon him as a baby. So he carries a lot of emotional and psychological hurt from this experience, even as a teenager. T.J. Jones is also a very gifted athlete, and but because he doesn't really see school sports as being very appealing, just because of the authority factor and group dynamics, he doesn't participate in any high school sports, which really aggravates the high school coaches who almost see it as his duty as a student to participate in these sports and be a star athlete in a community that really holds high school athletics to a very high standard and high importance. So the athletes at TJ's school, Cutter High, are pretty almost stereotypical jocks in the regard that they bully a lot of the other students, they hold themselves a little bit above everybody else. And TJ finally sees one bullying too many one day and decides that he's going to pull together a ragtag group to form the school swim team and compete and get the, precious letter jackets and really show these other athletes, that there's maybe a little bit more to what it means to be a high school athlete than they're letting on. Obviously, this comes against some resistance from the other athletes and even some of the coaches, but TJ perseveres. So basically what we have is a very straightforward sports story in a lot of ways, forming together a swim team and practice and training and going out for competitions and seeing all that, and it's a really great positive experience. But as you're reading it, you might be going, well, why is this called Whale Talk? It's because they swim all the time? That seems kind of strange. But as mentioned earlier, TJ carries this emotional hurt, and he's not the only character uh, who does. In order to deal with a lot of the emotional pain that he took from being abandoned, he visited with a child therapist for much of his childhood. And in the course of the story, he goes back and revisits her while she's tending to another client who is a biracial little girl who is incurring large amounts of psychological and emotional abuse at home. And even at such a young age has taken on this form of self-injury. She wants to literally scrub off um, her skin color, her African Americanness. So hopefully her stepfather will like her more. Obviously, when TJ witnesses this, it stirs up a lot of just anger and feelings and things like that. And for the reader, it's also a pretty gripping scene to watch. And even TJ's adoptive father um, went through a traumatic occurrence in his 20s, and he was actually the cause of it. It was this really startling accident that happened. So when the book is looking at trauma, it's from all sides. Whether you're the victim, some of the characters create it and perpetuate traumatic occurrences against other characters. So we're really seeing it from all sides. And it forces you to examine the nature of this pain. And TJ's adoptive father explains this through whales, saying that when whales need to communicate an emotion, they send out this pure cry into the ocean that travels for miles, and all the other whales can hear it, whereas human beings struggle a little bit more to communicate and deal with these emotions, and sometimes they come out in really intense ways, whether it's responding, retaliating against an abuser, or just kind of retreating because you don't know how to handle it, or carrying that weight with you all your life. So yeah, so you have this really straightforward sports story, which is very detailed, and for anybody engaged in sports, I think they'll find that pretty interesting and relatable, but also just the way that the characters are dealing with all of these pains and traumas and everything else. But the book is definitely darkly funny, and there's definitely a normalcy to it. The trauma never really seems exploitive um, on the part of the characters. I think a lot of readers, whether they'd like to, if they're, whether they're ready to come out with it or not, probably, if they haven't experienced this type of pain, maybe know somebody close to them who has. Um, and so it's pretty relatable in that regard. Chris Crutcher has written a number of books, and we do have several of them in our collection. And the ones that we don't have, we could easily obtain through interlibrary loan. So if you read Whale Talk and you like it, probably a good guess that you may enjoy some of his other works as well. And that's Whale Talk, and I'm Diana Layton, and I'll see you guys next month. Thanks.